I'm Steve Schmidt. I'm the training manager for Gates Air, and today we're going to talk about the calibration procedure for a FAX transmitter. This procedure will be good for a FAX 5 kilowatt up to a FAX 40 kilowatt transmitter. Each of the transmitters will have 3 modes of operation possible. There'll be an FM mode, FM plus HD, and HD only. The test procedure that is in the manual in section 5 will be the same for each. You just want to make sure when you're doing the mode of operation you're intended that it shows up on the screen, and we'll get to that once we're into the procedure itself. The next thing to talk about is the power meter. So I have a Bird watt meter here with a through-line coupler already in the system. If you do not have that, there's a couple of other methods that you can use for an external power meter. That can be either an external directional coupler in line, or you can use the sample points on the transmitter. The sample points on the transmitter for a single power block will be on the front panel. For a multiple power block, that sample point will be inside the door here on the system control panel. If you're using an external power meter with a coupler, you'll need to know the coupling value for the frequency that you are calibrating to, and that will be entered into your power meter itself. Once you're ready at that point, you want to make sure that the transmitter is in disable. You don't want anybody to remotely turn the transmitter on or off, or try to raise and lower power as you're doing the power calibration. The other thing we're going to do at this point, if you've got your meter all hooked up and ready to go, the next thing is to warm the transmitter. The transmitter needs to be turned on and warmed for approximately 30 minutes to stabilize the PA temperatures. Otherwise, the power will drift around on you as you do the calibration, and you'll have to wait longer to adjust the power to get stability there. So to do that, we're just going to simply turn the transmitter on. Okay, so we've had the transmitter running for 30 minutes. We've got the temperature on the module stabilized, so we're ready to start the calibration procedure. So again, just as a reminder here, you'll want to read section 5 of the manual, the calibration procedure, before you start this. It's always a good idea to read through each of the lines and make sure you understand the procedure. Also, obviously, looking at this video would be a benefit too. So the first thing we do, we've already got our transmitter disabled, we got it running. So we're now going to go into the setup menu on the transmitter power block. We're going to go to transmitter calibrate, transmitter power calibrate. Okay, so the next step is to determine the total power output that we're going to calibrate to. So in this case, we're running at 10 kilowatts. Since we're doing a new one, we're going to run it at 9,900 watts. You can see we are in the FM only mode. If you are wanting to do a FM plus HD calibration, you will have to go up to the exciter, make sure that it's in the FM plus HD, come back down here, this will say FM plus HD, and then you know you are in the correct mode and you're ready to do the power calibration. So to change our TPO, you basically highlight it. You're going to raise or lower it to depending on which your new TPO is. We're just going to go with 9,900 watts. So once we do that, we're at 9,900. We're going to select enter, and you'll see the status say phase 1 done. Once that's done, now we're ready to start adjusting the power out of the transmitter. What that's done is set all the electronic attenuators within the system to a certain point. Also, it shut the APC off, and now we're going to raise and lower the transmitter power on the external meter. We're only looking at the external meter. We don't care about anything else at this point because that is our reference. So now we're done down here for the moment, so now we're going to come up to the exciter. The Okay, so the exciter now is where we're going to adjust power. You never want to touch the raise lower power buttons on the transmitter itself. So you can see currently we're running at about 6.9 kilowatts on our bird meter. Okay, so now obviously we need to go to 9900 here, so we're going to go into the exciter setup. So exciter setup, transmitter control, and then you can see we have external APC gain and external APC limit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get to the first thing we're going to do is set the disable, so it'll allow us to make adjustments. We're going to go to external APC limit. We're going to highlight that, and we're going to raise that number to its maximum. Okay, so the maximum number there is 4,095. Press that. What that allows us to do is to raise the external APC gain and not limit us. So if you don't raise that up off the limit, you may not be able to get all the way up to your TPO. So now we're there. So the next step is to raise the transmitter power. So we're going to do that by going into the external APC gain. And we're going to start increasing that gain. And you're going to watch this external meter or whatever meter you have. And we're going to wait until we get to the TPO we set down in the power block. And in my case, it's going to be 9,900 watts. So what you'll want to do is to slowly increase this, and you can see you're going to get some jumps in there. And then you'll just want to get it close, let it settle, and just make like one-click adjustments. It takes a little bit of patience to get it there sometimes. See it's drifting down a little bit on me. Okay, so 9.9 kilowatts. So we want to leave it right there. You can see it's stabilized. So now we're done with the exciter at this point. And now we're going to come back down to the transmitter. And on the front panel of that, we're ready to do the actual calibrate. So what it's going to do now is when I'm going to highlight this, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to press the button, and you'll see it says in progress. You might see the raise lower buttons light a little bit. It'll go through its procedure, and now it says done. So that has completed the power calibration for the forward and the reflected power calibration. It's done. So now your external meter and your front panel meter should match. Okay? In the procedure. So we're now calibrated. We have 9.9 kilowatts on our external meter. We have 9.9 on our front panel. So at this point, now we're ready to set the APC limit. So that will ensure that the transmitter does not overdrive or ramp up past where it needs to and cause any kind of a problem. So we're going to come down to the transmitter front panel, and we're going to go into status. We're going to scroll down till we get to system, and then we're going to go to system meters. Enter. And now what we're going to look at is this APC output voltage. The APC output is what the transmitter is sending to the exciter to tell it to raise or lower power. So we don't want that to overdrive rapidly, so we're going to set a limit for that in the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this APC voltage as we adjust our APC limit. Once we hit that threshold, you'll see this, the power will start to decrease, so that will force this APC up. At that point, that is kind of our limit right there of the APC. That's the threshold of the APC. So what we're going to do, once we hit that knee, we're going to go back up and raise that up off that knee by about 300 counts, and that's where we'll leave it. So to start with, we got about 2.74 volts. That's where you're normally going to be sitting after the power cow. Your APC reference is always going to be 3.5. So we've got a good power cow. So now we're ready to set that limit. So now we're going to come back up to the transmitter or the exciter. We're going to hit setup, transmitter control, and now where we adjusted it to 4,095 before, we're going to decrease this back down and set this properly. So we're going to sit here, we're going to hit 4,095, and we're going to start lowering that number. And now we're going to watch the APC output as I lower that number until that voltage just starts to rise. So it's you want to kind of approach it slowly, otherwise you might drive right on through it and miss where you see it kind of start to increase. So now I'm down to 1400 on my number, 1300. We haven't seen any real increase yet. Now I'm down to 1200. Okay, 1180. See, I went way too far there. So you can see that it jumped way up to 3. So I was down around 900. And one other thing you might want to do periodically as you're scrolling through the numbers is to unhighlight it and then re-highlight it and save your position. And then let it settle and then go back and raise or lower from there. So now, there we go. So now I'm getting close to there we go. 7.7. So I'm at 1110 right now. There we go. So now you can see, now I went from 274, 275, I saw 276. There it goes. So right about 1106, that's right where we're starting to kind of see it, kind of want to start to jump up. So I would probably leave that there, and then my 1106 number, I would change that to 1406, and then that's where I would leave it to run permanently. finishes the calibration procedure and the APC limit setup.